This morning, here is the warning, the new warning from President Biden about Donald Trump.
What's next for America?
Is this on his official account? Wow. A unified Reich? That's Hitler's language. That's not America's. He cares about holding on to power. I care about you.
That's Biden's reaction to the social media video that Trump's account posted. Under the headline, "What's next for America?" is the statement, "The creation of a unified Reich." That video remained up for hours even after his campaign acknowledged those words were a mistake. The video, though, has been removed as of today. But has the political impact been removed? Joining me right now, CNN political commentator Bakari Sellers and Mike Dubke, former Trump White House communications director. It's good to see you guys. Mike, let me ask you, the Trump campaign's response to all of this was that it was reposted by a staffer, and the way that the campaign put it was clearly, who clearly did not see the word Reich we're talking about. What do you think about how this happened and how it was handled from your perspective? And as a political matter, would it have been malpractice for Joe Biden to not call this out?
Yeah, well, we'll start from the top. I mean, just from as a campaign matter, it was, and if I'm being charitable, it was either stupidity or laziness on behalf of the staffer, not recognizing that word. It's a word in the English language that, frankly, we shouldn't be using. As a Bills fan, I say the only time I want to hear Reich is Frank Reich leading the greatest comeback in NFL playoff history. That's when you can say Reich. So this was just a piece of a campaign staffer that failed. I thought the campaign did a really good job of cleaning it up. They were immediate. They closed the book on this. But absolutely, you're right. If I was running Joe Biden's campaign, I would have used it. I may have not taken 5 takes of that 5-second video to do it, but I would have closed the book. I would have brought it up the way that they did. That's all part of these presidential campaigns nowadays.
Bakari, the way that Biden's take was that's not the language of any American. It's of any Americans. It's the language of Hitler's Germany. And the way that Biden has previously talked about it is like, this is not the language of American presidents, but he did expand it to like of Americans. That's how he put it to donors in Boston yesterday at a campaign reception. What do you do with this? Because so few people, actually, is what I mean to say, other than Trump's biggest supporters, see his Truth Social posts. And his rhetoric does not seem to be denting his poll numbers very much.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Kate. I mean, it's somewhat baked into the cake, the trafficking and racism, the trafficking and anti-Semitism. You have to call it out at this point in time because we're seeing this rise in anti-Semitism. And for the leader of one of the 2 major parties in the country to be using language like this, I think is really disturbing. I think the fact that that noise that we heard this morning on air was them backing the bus up over whatever intern that was. But there are other people who are responsible or should be responsible for those tweets going out. In fact, I think the former president himself bears all that responsibility. Trump's campaign, and this is going to sound strange coming from me, but Trump's campaign actually has been extremely well done. The candidate is the problem. I mean, he lacks discipline. But Jason Miller and team have done an amazing job at just trying to right the ship and not letting things like this happen. And so it's surprising that as carefully as they've curated this new Trump campaign, that something like this happens, which goes to show you that Trump was probably involved. Joe Biden has to use it, but will it move the needle much? It'll be good at fundraisers, but the average voter cares more about our last segment, talking about gas prices, than they care about the anti-Semitism that is Donald Trump.
One thing that we do also know and have seen that voters care about is contraception. And Mike, there's something there I want to ask you about as well, because Trump did this local interview with a Pennsylvania. I'm good at those. Local Pennsylvania reporter, and he was asked whether he supports any restrictions on a person's right to contraception. Trump said, "We're looking at that, and I'm going to have a policy on that very shortly, and I think it's something that you'll find interesting." He was asked if that meant he would support some restrictions on contraception, and he kind of waffled through it and basically suggested that some states are going to have different policies than others. Then he backtracked on Truth Social. "I have never, will never advocate imposing restrictions on birth control or other contraceptives. I do not support a ban on birth control," as he goes on. What is going on here, Mike?
Well, a couple of things. One, I think this is in the almost the exact same vein as the previous conversation we just had. In this case, I think I can be. I don't need to be charitable. I'm going to make the direct assumption that the Donald Trump misheard or didn't think through the answer to the question when he said contraception and confused it with an abortion pill. And other parts of the conversation of Roe v. Wade. I'm going to go there because we've seen in other campaigns where even Republican primary campaigns with Lisa Murkowski and Kelly Tshibaka in Alaska, where Murkowski used this very effectively. Now, in that case, Kelly Tshibaka meant to say contraception. In this case, I think it was very clear that the president did not. His campaign cleaned it up. But I also, listening to the clip, and I think it's important to listen to the clip, I also wish, and I think the American people also hope for this, is that when it is that obvious of a faux pas, whether it be on the right or the left, that the anchor clean it up. I mean, I'm a bit dubious that the anchor wasn't looking for some clickbait here in the way that he phrased the question and how he phrased the question frankly, to an individual who has had a lot on his mind this week and been distracted by other items.
I will say, just in defense of all anchors, I can't get into any anchor's mind, but in defense of all anchors, I ask the questions, and it is your job to listen to my question and to answer it, because I promise you
absolutely.
I will follow up, right? Mike Bakari, go ahead.
And I trust you will follow up. I wish he had as well.
Well, that's a good point.
I think I struggle with that answer so much because people come on this TV show and air all the time and give Joe Biden hell about his ability to do the job due to lack of energy or age or whatever, and to make the excuse that Donald Trump has a lot on his mind. I mean, he's running for president of the United States. The fact is, Donald Trump is responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade. He put the justices on the court to do it. And so contraception, this is the way that I would put it if I was the Joe Biden campaign. Look, if you want Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, and Donald Trump deciding what your wife does with her body, re-elect Donald Trump. They don't do well on this issue, and they also don't do well on policy, which is why he stumbles. People vote for Donald Trump for something else. They vote for Donald Trump for that machismo, for that what they believe to be strength. People don't vote for Donald Trump for policy depth because he has none. I mean, Donald Trump has the policy depth of a shallow bathtub. And so that's what you see when you have him try to answer things about reproductive health. He simply cannot.